And I'll tend to be very, if it was perfectionism, it would probably look a bit like this and a bit, and talk about fear of failure and criticism and high, rigid standards and things like that, and have people, sometimes nodding their heads, and in the end, it kind of doesn't matter. There's still things they're doing that aren't working for them, and we still need to work out what it is that they're doing that's problematic. What's the function of that behavior?
Welcome back to Act Root to Fruit. My name is Marcel, and I'm on a journey to excavate the roots of the contextual behavioral psychologies and sciences so that the work that we do and that I do is as precise as possible. And for those of us who have come to ACT a little later, or for those of us who are non-congenital behaviorists, just working to help us understand what all this means and how to make sense of it. So really honored and grateful to have Jennifer Kemp with me today. Thanks, Jennifer.
So great to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, Jennifer's a clinical psychologist in Adelaide, South Australia, specializing in working with perfectionism and writing a book right now on perfectionism. We'll talk about later, and does consultation and works in a private practice. So I really enjoyed your book and also your presentation at the conference last year. It was great.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing it as well. I've done
Yeah.
it a few other times, a couple other times now. I've pitched for WorldCon this year, so I'm fingers crossed. I want to dive deeper into the self-criticism stuff that we touched on.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of so many therapists struggle with that.
This term perfectionism is one that is pretty common for our folk. Would you say?
I think it's really common for our clients and for
Uh-huh.
us as ourselves as therapists. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's such a term that's been around for such a long time, but always, from my mind, treated as if it's a sort of a personality trait that you're stuck
Hmm.
with. I think,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
that you're such a perfectionist is a sort of phrase, or I'm so perfectionistic might be something like an
Hmm.
adjective you would use to describe yourself,
Yeah.
but not something that's traditionally been seen as something you can treat until perhaps about the last 10 years or so. And
Okay.
CBT, a small number of CBT practitioners have kind of had a crack at it, and there's
Yeah.
some good books, in that kind of area. If you want to look at, look for different treatment methodologies, but I think behavioural science, contextual behavioural science, has a lot it can add to this, and
Yeah.
a lot of clarity, and actually. And I was, in preparing kind of my thoughts just for what we're going to talk about today, I was thinking, really it's not any different to any other behavior,
Yeah.
and we can treat it as any other behavior that's unworkable in ourselves or in our clients. So
Mm. Yeah. Okay. And so I'm stuck on this personality trait term. Wondering, as you said that, I got the sense that you've untangled perfectionism from that kind of web of it being something that's fixed and unmovable.
yeah, well, I started by looking at, I struggled with perfectionism myself, so
Yeah.
it was that's kind of a helpful reference point for me. But certainly, I started by just sort of looking at what are the behaviors. So really topographically, what is it that we're looking at when we're looking at perfectionistic behaviors? And so you'll always see sort of high standards, and that's, I'm such a perfectionist is a phrase that you would talk about if you
Hmm.
were, had really high standards, wanted a perfect GPA, or wanted to, have everyone like you all the time, those kinds of standards that we might, set for ourselves. But there's something about some people setting them in a very rigid way. So
Yeah.
becoming, from an act sense, we might call that, just fused to those ideas, or and really, or they can be almost really obsessive I think,
Mm-hmm.
as well. There can be an obsessive quality to those standards. And so people setting themselves not just really high standards, but ones that aren't flexible, can't be shifted. And also they keep setting them higher all the time so that these standards are just perpetually out of reach, slightly out of reach. So I want to be a top student becomes I must, get A's in every assignment all the time, no matter how small the grade it's, how little it's worth in terms of my overall grade.
Yeah.
I must get an A on it, which leads to all sorts of really unhelpful behaviors and over checking, like excessive work and checking excessively, all that kind of stuff. So there's this rigidity around those standards, I think, is the different. There's nothing wrong with aiming to do well and trying to do your best and, you're really pushing yourself to work hard. But when it becomes rigid, that's the problem, I think, there. And then I started to think about, what is it that's driving all the different kinds of unhelpful perfectionistic style behaviors we'll see. And just keeping in mind that this sort of unhelpful avoidance can be both really active avoidance, so
Mm-hmm.
things like checking and working harder and like excessive striving, seeking reassurance, those kinds of things. And it can also be a kind of a passive avoidance as well, where it's sort of opting out, procrastinating, which is a hallmark of
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
um, becoming really um, just sort of taking the easy path, the risk-free path, staying in a dead-end job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sort of see it. Perfectionist kind of goes both ways. The stereotype tends to lead towards the A student, the overachiever, but actually, I find that in people who've been watching TV for 10 years, they've been doing very little with their lives because
Mm-hmm.
they just can't do anything to the standard that they want to
Yeah,
do.
we have this image of it's just a kind of type A person.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
perfectionist.
absolutely. But I'd say there's just as many people who
Mm-hmm.
really they
Yeah,
can't do it well enough, so they don't do anything at all,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah. That's something I mean, I've really had some nice experiences. I don't know about nice. I've had some close contacts recently with how much my procrastination has to do with anxiety. You
Right.
know,
Okay.
I thought it was like confidence before. Like I'll just last minute. And
No,
not so
it's
much the
not.
case.
Yeah, well, confidence is the byproduct of having done something, right? You usually feel more confident after you've done it. The
Yeah.
procrastination, the avoidance is really about fear of failure. So, just sort of continuing topographically in what you'll see, perfectionism is so much about, I think it's a collection of behaviors essentially driven
Mm-hmm.
by this one aversive, which is fear of failing.
Mm.
Failing, I use that term in like the absolute broadest sense. So making a mistake or some kind of error, being rejected, not being good enough in some way. Um, there's a lot of perfectionism is interpersonal, so someone not
Yeah.
liking you,
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And procrastination is, yeah, what if I can't do it right, or it's just, people aren't happy with me, or maybe it's just too hard and I might
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
So we're really avoiding all those uncomfortable feelings that come up with that.
Mm. Hmm.
And you would have found that as you nudge closer to your anxiety,
Oh
that
yeah. Yeah.
this doesn't feel good, right?
No, no, it doesn't. And I guess it makes me think about, my own experience as you're talking about, my with perfectionism. And um, as I was thinking about our talk today, I've been pondering more and reflecting more on where just some of the history of that. And I think because I don't have a history of like having a parent who's like telling me I have to get straight A's or
Yeah.
that kind of pressure. But I think interpersonally, a lot of it comes from being overweight as a child and just like wanting
Right.
to, and a young adult, and wanting to please others. Kind of
Mhm.
like, let me do this dance over here so you like me, and you like ignore this, like all this horrific part of me. You know. Yeah.
So what are the uncomfortable feelings that then would come up for you in that context? As you sort of think, you start procrastinating and you notice this anxiety comes up. What is it you're noticing in yourself?
I think it's, I mean, a lot of aversion to conflict and, wanting to please and really, really like, I mean, I can, if I'm paying attention, I can just see how I'm steered by, my, by other, what my, steered by other people that are around me. Maybe it's even as simple as like yesterday, I was going for a walk and I was listening to music. And one of the things I like to do is dance. I love to dance. And I was just like, I was just jamming. Okay. So, but I'm just noticing how every time I pass someone, because I'm here on the boardwalk and, it was at night. And so it wasn't a lot of people, but every time I pass someone, I'm like, I can't enjoy like I want to enjoy because I'm thinking about, and I don't think that that's, unique to me.
Mhm.
But I can see how that's kind of a microcosm of a lot of things. And, whether it's me playing saxophone, knowing that people can hear me, you know?
Mm, yeah, absolutely. I quit saxophone because people would in my house would say, like, "Oh, you're practicing again. It's so loud."
It's such a hard instrument to practice with people
Really,
around.
really.
Uh,
Yeah, so the procrastination then for you comes when you feel like there might be conflict or someone might not be happy with you
yeah.
or that you
Yeah.
might be breaking social rules or bending them in some way, so you'll tend to pull back from that. And that comes up all the time in our work as psychologists or therapists, is having to say stuff that might not go down well, like take small risks
Hmm.
to sort of call it as we see it
Yeah.
sometimes. And that can really, for some people, really interfere with, I think, their ability to be an effective therapist. I'm sure you've worked out ways to manage that in session where you
Yeah.
feel that you would feel that. I don't I do like I sort of procrastinate on these moments of like I really should probably be saying this now, like it
Yeah.
still be hard for them to hear, but I
Yeah.
don't want to hurt them or upset them, or it
Yeah.
shows up everywhere.
Yeah. And it's, and then for me, the new element to it is having sort of my own private practice and it being the first time in my career that I'm, having financial transactions with clients. That's
Hmm.
another kind of complicating contingency to the
Yeah.
relationship. And it, I mean, I teach too. And so that's, it's a whole nother, the other areas where I can see some of the same songs being played in my head. Yeah.
So that's really the other elements, the topographically of perfectionism that I find in my clients is that what's playing in your head piece. The self criticism, really. Was that good enough? Or that was a shit session? Or my
Yeah.
favorite, my personal favorite is another therapist would have done that session better than me. If
Mm.
Robin Walzer was here, he would have sorted that
Yeah.
right out.
Well, I think I'm comfortable just assuming that that's always the case.
Yeah, right. I'm uncomfortable assuming that, but not because I think I should be as good as Robin Walzer or Kelly Wilson or whoever I'm comparing myself
Yeah.
to that day,
Yeah.
but because I just feel like I should be better,
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
of the time. The supervision or consultation I get around my practice is like half the time about this. Like I should,
Mm.
like how can I do this better? Like how
Hmm.
I'm having a moment of like a lot of self criticism, and
Yeah.
I've had to work really, really hard on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me too, it's like if I think one of the other ways, and maybe we're just airing our laundry. I won't call it dirty. We'll just call
Isn't
it
that
our
what
laundry.
this is? This is CBS. What else do we do?
Is like, having my own life issues or interpersonal issues outside of, professional stuff and thinking, oh my gosh, like how can I help anyone else if I don't have my shit figured out?
Oh yeah, that's a great one, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 That's why I like to open up workshops talking about, my own struggles with eating disorder when I was um, a kid, a teen, and in my 20s, my struggles with anxiety. I've had a major depressive episode
Yeah.
in my mid 20s. I talk about that. And it's interesting. In CBS, that's just so normal, right? That's
Hmm.
really normal that we would talk about that kind of stuff. But I presented to a group of, there was 600 people in the webinar that night. It was the same one I ran for WorldCon last year. And
Uh-huh.
basically here in Australia, and they were kind of all different backgrounds of psychology, probably predominantly CBT. So
Mm.
in the workshop feedback, there was just comment after comment about thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
that
wow. Beautiful.
you had struggled with this stuff. That felt really validating for me. Like it was this huge outpouring of
Wow.
like,
Beautiful.
wow, hang on, I'm a psychologist and I'm allowed to struggle.
Yeah.
It's like that was news. Like that was really news.
Yeah.
And yet, clearly people had tuned in because on the topics, the perfectionistic therapist, they tuned in because they themselves were struggling with this stuff and wanted to work on it with their
Hmm.
clients as well. But admitting that was such a big step, and you know, I'm still working on it. Still working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about how much we're naturally looking for answers,
Mm,
and it might be one week I'm a perfectionist, the next week I'm codependent. That's really my problem. And then the next week, no, it's actually just anxiety, and
yeah.
even though I've been practicing for, I don't know, 12 years or whatever it's been, I'm still surprised at how when I pay attention, people are really just oftentimes asking like, why am I like this?
Mm.
Why is this happening?
And we love a label, don't we?
Yeah.
Just a heuristic for understanding the world. I have this, I have, and we become wedded to those as well.
Yeah.
So, my anxiety, my depression. I, I, I'm really explicit with people right when we do consent around. We're working on the processes that are not working for you, and I'm trying not in the therapy I'm trying not to provide more labels. And I, although I might say, well, it sounds like you people told you that's perfectionistic. It sounds a bit, and I'll tend to be very, if it was perfectionism, it would probably look a bit like this and a bit, and talk about fear of failure and
Hmm.
criticism and rigid standards and things like that, and have people, sometimes nodding their heads, and in the end, it kind of doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like, there's still things they're doing that aren't working for them, and we still need to work out what it is that they're doing that's problematic.
Yeah.
What's the function of that behavior? I love your podcast
Thank you.
because when you, oh, you're welcome. Um, you know when you talk about trying to get like underneath the work that we do and try and understand what it is that's going on, that exactly describes what I've been trying to do myself,
Yeah.
in recent years, more and more so. And so the
What drives you
personality
to
stuff,
that direction?
being more effective,
Yeah.
I think, you
Okay.
know um, trying to help more. That's probably the value. And I'm curious.
Hmm.
I enjoy learning. And yeah, what about you?
All that, and I want to be in with the cool kids too.
Yeah, okay, so there's a bit of that. All right, I'll fess up. I was a bit of that. I've been to several world cons now, and my first one, I had no idea what anyone was talking about. So I guess I
Yeah.
did want to be able to talk to people and actually understand what it is they're saying. What do they mean by contingencies?
You're right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do they mean by transformation of stimulus function? Someone help me. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
But
definitely that.
you're a really hard worker. I know that you've done a lot to get to where you are, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you've seen that impact your work in the consultation room.
The answer that comes up probably is my inner critic that says, well, it's probably not all that much better, is it? Really? Still struggling with that, aren't you? Yeah. So
Still struggling with me, aren't you? Right.
I think, yeah, and then there's that modest side of you that kind of says, well, you can't blow your own horn about how great you are and this sort of thing. I think I'm more effective at just getting to the heart of what's going wrong for
Yeah.
someone and more accurate, I guess, in sort of identifying that. And there's always so much work for me to do on the way I do that.
Hmm.
And I've ended up spending like a lot of my caseload now is eating disorders and weight management. And
Hmm.
that's really convenience in the sense of I don't really advertise at all for clients, and there's just hardly anyone here in my local area doing that work, and so
Hmm.
doctors just find me listed for that couple of places, and that's just how it works.
Yeah.
So there's something really nice about having CEO, anxiety would be the overall anxiety, the nexus between that and perfectionism, OCD, which there's a lot of overlap really, isn't there? And sort of the way that translates into sort of problems with chronic illness and eating and
Hmm.
weight and things like that.
Hmm.
That's probably the amorphous kind of clients that I see. And there's something really nice about the cohesiveness of that now. If that I can just continue to refine how I identify the problematic, the unworkable behavior, the
Hmm.
things that people are doing, the aversives. I start to see the themes. What um, if as a therapist, my spirit animal, I like to say, is probably wrong, is Emily Sandoz. I loved your session with her, and
Oh,
I
she's great.
she's amazing. And so listening, trying to always work out what's the aversive that's driving the behavior, what's the snake in
Hmm.
the room, getting just gradually better at that, I think, and
Hmm.
understanding. I have no training. Here in Australia, there's just very little now, and none at all when I did my training on clinical behavior analysis. It's
Okay.
very, like, not a big industry here, and not sort of integrated with therapy, just sort of stuck in the kids with autism space.
Hmm.
And um, so trying to educate myself on that has, I think, really helped me with that specificity, that accuracy in my work.
Cool. As we were going along, I think I broke our core. I want to hear more about some of the functions of what's happening there and how you get at like not only you seeing the functions but helping someone else understand functionally what's happening.
Yeah, sure. So, what I'm looking at when I'm noticing perfectionistic behavior in people, so looking for those common processes that are going on, whether or not you would, and CBT went this way, sort of diagnosing clinical perfectionism, you could, but regardless, I'm looking for those processes of, particularly this sort of fear of failure driving really unworkable avoidant behavior, and
Hmm.
that there's negative consequences of that in the long term. But in the
Okay.
short term, the function of that behavior is usually some kind of relief, or so it's negatively reinforced, the behavior.
Hmm.
So if you think about procrastination, which is such a common behavior that I would work with people, whether they be procrastinating on exercising or doing assignments at uni or whatever it is that they want to be doing, making that phone call, sending that text.
Hmm.
In the short term, if we just put it off or we go and do something else, we distract ourselves with our favorite game that we're playing at the moment, whatever it is,
Hmm.
then we get a sense of relief. from the anxiety that we have around doing it. And so the anxiety is that we might fail in some way, make
Mhm.
a mistake, look stupid, look awkward. For me, it would be like, look not competent would be kind of the fear that would drive my, unhelpful therapeutic
Yeah.
behaviors probably. And so we're getting that kind of short-term relief. So really, it's the control agenda, isn't
Mhm.
it? So trying to control our inner experiences by doing these things that are getting us away from, in the end, living a valued life. Like a lot of people, very tuned into every mistake they've ever made is their
Mhm.
entire kind of, not
Mhm.
entire, but a big
Yeah.
chunk of their kind of thought processes, micro focusing.
Yeah.
You've probably had heaps of socially anxious clients, and perfectionism and social anxiety go so beautifully together
Mhm.
because there's this focus on what if I say something wrong, look stupid, be awkward. And of course, the more you focus on not being awkward, the more awkward you are in general. So becoming really just hyper vigilant to
Mhm.
any potential mistake, past mistake, future mistake, what you're doing in the moment. Very little mindfulness, actually, mostly the past and the future. Quite kind of really struggling to be aware. And I would say, by doing that, constantly watching what you're doing,
Mm.
constantly seeking reassurance for
Mhm.
that, or checking in your own mind that you're not being
Mhm.
awkward. You are avoiding a potential future mistake, and avoiding the shame that would come up
Yeah.
if you touch upon that. And of course, there's long term consequences which you're not paying any attention to at all. The distance that it's creating between you and your friends, the fact that it's just too hard to go out and do this, so you don't go at all. Um, how isolating, how much less fun you have, all
Mhm.
those kinds of longer term consequences. What our job is as therapists is to kind of, I think, bring bring some awareness of those longer term consequences into the room, and then start to make decisions around, how could you be more present in that moment,
Mhm.
even if there's a risk that you'll say something stupid, that you look like an idiot or something like that.
Yeah.
um, and what would be worth it, what would be a life down the road that would be worth it for you.
Mhm.
If you could have warm, loving, respectful, fun friendships, does that sound kind of something worth aiming towards? Something
Mm.
towards
Yeah.
making efforts towards. So that's why, I feel like what I'm describing here is no different to any behavior you would work on with any client anytime. And the more I thought about, what we're going to talk about today, and I'm putting together some stuff for a workshop I'm going to be running later in the year, I think, how's this? This is not different to anything. I have nothing unique to say, so I'm going to have to cycle around that in my own way.
Yeah.
Like,
What's what do you think the function of sharing that was?
oh, oh. I actually think it's really helpful to think, hang on a second, there's nothing different about this, because it means that
Yeah.
everyone who's doing ACT can do this. There's nothing like magical
Well,
about working with
okay.
perfectionism. It's not this
Yeah.
sort of, people do say, I need help on how to work with perfectionism. Like, you're already doing it, but let's just orient you to like
Okay.
how you do it.
Mhm.
And so that job still needs to be done. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
All right. All
I'm
right.
not out of a
Well,
job yet.
it's interesting you wrapped up with that because I was thinking while you were saying this, just what's the utility of thinking of the collection of behaviors as something that resembles perfectionism? If
Yeah.
for CBS clinicians, like,
Yeah.
you're going to be coming out with an awesome workbook here soon, and we want
Yeah.
everyone who listens to buy 3 copies.
Yeah, at
Um,
least. Yeah. Buy one for all your family.
those perfectionistic
It's
bastards
in
out
coming
there.
out in time for Christmas, so
Oh,
there you
nice, nice.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because I think the utility of that is that it is a topic that baffles people.
Yeah.
There is a it's kind of like almost like these are behaviors that are all oriented around this kind of fear of failure. So there's a collection of behaviors here that
Okay.
tend to go together. They're not always, but I think they go together. So I think there's some cohesiveness there that is useful for people to conceptualize as in terms of treatment. And
Okay.
because we know that unhelpful, maladaptive, whatever you want to call them, perfectionistic behaviors are really strongly related to a whole range of commonly diagnosed mental health problems, and that often they're missed. And that was certainly my experience of having been to therapy for problems with eating, when I was 16, and I was
Hmm.
back in there again, still struggling in sort of early 20s,
Yeah.
having anxiety. Did fine for a little while, anxiety in my mid 20s, and depression. Saw a therapist then, and no one picked up this sort of underlying thread of behaviors that were related to all of those problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really, if we had addressed that cohesive thread of processes, unhelpful processes, which we could call perfectionism, once I started addressing that, it really helped with my anxiety, and it really helped with eating and feeling more comfortable with that,
Hmm.
and all of those things, of course, are still a work in
Hmm.
progress.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And
I'm with you.
and
100%.
yeah, and yet having sort of a way of understanding that has been really helpful. And the final sort of piece of that for me has been the self compassion
Mm.
element of that, which has
Yeah.
just
Yeah. I
been,
really appreciated that element in your book.
yeah, thanks. Um,
Yeah.
and I certainly don't hold myself out as as an expert on compassion focused therapy. In fact, that was the chapter that I was the most nervous to write,
Mm.
because I could have a ton of books next to me and listen to a lot of stuff and been to workshops, but still feel like it's something I'm very much learning. And so I think there's some useful things in there. I'm hoping that it's kind of foundational in terms of
Mm.
compassion focused therapy, and I encourage people to go elsewhere and keep pursuing it.
Mm.
But yeah, I think for me, the compassion for myself and the compassion for that inner self critic is just um, actually finding compassion for that part of
Yeah.
me was really a turning point. And in actual fact, cycled back around that in my own consultation sessions recently, where I even found myself getting to the place where I was like, hey, I need this guy. Like I need this part of myself, that this
Mm.
criticism has actually a really important function for me, and really important purpose, and I wouldn't want to actually ever get rid of it, which it's a long way from
Yeah.
where I used to be on this. So,
Mm.
like, I don't actually ever want to let this go, this part of
Mm.
myself.
Hmm. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I think I appreciated that this part of myself, this sort of tendency to doubt and critique, shows up when things are really important to me, when I really care. And it's a way of saying, hey, this is really important, don't mess it up.
Mm.
And it's a way of pushing myself to keep working on my craft, basically. So, whilst the phrasing, and it has the phrasing that my sort of inner self critic has softened definitely over the years.
Hmm.
So it is much more likely to compare me to Robin Walser or someone like that. Emily would know what to do. Um, it's not saying, you're crap at this. You're
Hmm.
hope. It's not going often doing that. So that helps, but and that kind of accountability to like keep working on this, keep getting better, keep looking for the ways that you can help, um,
Hmm.
keep questioning and cycling back through and self
Yeah.
reflecting on your own practice. It's
Yeah.
tied up with that, and that seems really important. It is really important to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. I'm thinking about my favorite. I think the song that really sums it up for my critic, and that's the song from Hamilton, "Satisfied." Or you heard the song?
I don't know it. No.
Oh gosh, you got to listen to it.
Yeah.
The main lyric is he's talking to this the musical Hamilton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking to this woman at a party, and kind of flirting, and he says, "You're like me, you've never been satisfied." And
Right.
that's the whole. And
Yeah.
it just hits at the heart for me of the critic, you know.
Yeah.
You're like me, I'm never satisfied.
Is that right?
I've never been satisfied.
Yeah, that's true. Never satisfied.
Never
And
satisfied.
yet, there's a part of that that sounds really important to you to keep. Also, maybe keep. Never just settle. Don't just say, okay, I'm a therapist now. I'm done. I'm
Hmm.
good at
Or
this.
I got tenure now, which I'm not an academic, but the
Yeah,
comic
that
common.
equivalent. Yeah,
Yeah, you get
yeah,
tenure, and then you don't do anything anymore and mail
yeah.
in your
That
courses.
that's basically.
Not that I've ever experienced that with a professor in my life.
No, no, they never. Um, no, they're very hardworking folk.
Yes.
Uh, I yeah, we. I don't think that you and I ever want to get to that point where we sort of kick our feet back up on the desk and say, "Yeah, I'm good at this now. I'm, I'm there. I've got there."
Yeah. Can I share some of my script with you,
Yeah,
and maybe get some, we can mess around with this here
yeah,
a bit and see what happens. So one of the things that my mind will do is I'll have an experience like maybe a nice, like, we're here by the beach, and like, oh, we go to the beach and with the family, and I'm thinking, God, this is just like, I need this every day. We need to do this every day. Okay, my mind starts to think about, like, how can this occur? How can I, make this thing happen every day? Yeah, and
yeah,
it's like it takes me away from just what's happening
yeah,
at that moment on the hike, or while I'm playing saxophone, or
yeah.
you know
What do you notice in your body when you kind of have that sense of like this? I need this. What sort of sensations come up for you?
I think there's a lot of clenching that happens.
Mm,
Aside from that script, I'm not someone who, I don't know that my critic is very elusive. I don't think that
mm,
it's one that's loud. It's kind of just like a snake charmer in a sense, or
mm-hmm,
something.
mm-hmm. Love that.
And it's there's a lot of physical clenching that goes on. So
Mm-hmm. Like a
especially like,
tension sort of
yeah, yeah,
tightness.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm kind of I'm pulling myself to the future or something.
I'm curious as well, like with that thought, you're at the beach. Wow, we should do this every day. So there's
Yeah.
that kind of rigidity there, right? I'm wondering, does that come with kind of a like, and that's just not going to be possible? Does it come with a
I
sense
don't
of kind
know.
of fear
I
or
don't know if
disappointment there?
I think it's like, yeah, I think the disappointment is that it can't, yeah, I mean, it can't happen. It can't happen. So it's not, maybe it's like, it's not real. There's this, if it's, how do I explain it? Mhm. Like, it has to be lasting for it to really matter.
Hmm.
It has to be, if it doesn't have permanence, it just,
Hmm.
like, did it really happen? You know?
So that would pull you away from your actual enjoyment and appreciation of that moment, right? There's
Yeah.
something there like I
Oh,
want
yeah.
this, I want it more, and I can't
Yeah.
really have it. What happens then? Like what do you do then?
Doing work to connect back to, where I am, and getting present, um, and engaging more with what's
Hmm.
happening outside of me,
Hmm.
or or
So kind of bringing yourself back into the moment is
yeah,
something you do that helps.
yeah,
Really like focusing on the kids or focusing on
yeah,
the feeling of the water or the sun on your skin, that kind of
yeah,
stuff that
yeah,
helps.
playing or just kind of laughing at that, that this thought. Um, uh, I think that in the past it was, but I'm thinking, as I'm talking about that, I'm just thinking about like functionally how maybe, especially in social situations, it's a way to, it's a safe place to be, in this kind of fantasy land,
Mm.
rather than, you know, um, rather than being more present. There's something more uncertain about, what's happening now than what I can conjure up in my fantasies and imagination.
So almost as if you were to really enjoy that experience and be there in it, you're going to feel the sting of the loss of that more later. When you have to go home or you have to head back to,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
somewhere
about
else.
loss.
It's
I think
different.
I just think I'm thinking like, you know, um, i in my fantasies, I can create this certain thing that's going to happen all the time, and
Mm,
while I'm doing that, I'm not living in this what could be a potentially uncertain event. Whereas,
mhm.
whatever the event is, um,
So the function's protective in that
maybe,
moment,
yeah.
protective of uncertainty. And don't we all kind of hate that?
Hmm. Yeah, especially when I'm not certain of it.
So if we can kind of, find ways of nailing down that uncertainty in some way, often do you notice like humans feel better, which is really a lot of OCD, right? So if I can, this is so good and it's uncertain how long it's going to last and how good it's going to be, and I have to live with that in the real now present
Hmm.
me. Or I can stay in this kind of fantasy land of living in this perfect beach time paradise, with friends who are always around and family
Hmm.
that's all never fights, always loving. And I can stay in that because that kind of, in one sense, feels more comfortable, less, more certain, more safe, something along those lines. So it's a pull to that. Is that kind of,
Yeah,
hmm,
yeah.
not humans amazing?
What's that?
Humans are amazing,
Oh
huh?
man. Oof. Yeah. Do you think if you could re-up, would you pick human again?
I don't know. It,
If you could pick any animal?
gosh, I have to think about that because there's some pretty big downsides to some other animals. So
Yeah.
like this one, I'd probably go again. I'd probably crack this one again.
Yeah.
So for you then, when you notice that happening, it sounds like there's times where you can kind of face that uncertainty and pull yourself into the present and the mess that
Hmm.
is children squabbling and people
Family.
getting sunburned.
Just
Family.
just put
Let's
family.
just call it family.
God.
And there's times when that's harder. Is that right? There's times then.
Oh yeah,
And where do
definitely.
you where do you go then? What happens then?
Hmm. I think I go into kind of a numb out place
Oh,
where I just am kind of thousand mile stare. Um, you know, poster child for alexithymia. I don't know if
mm-hmm.
alexithymia monthly, put out a
Yeah,
magazine. There would be
that
my
your
face there.
face
Yep.
on the cover.
And uh, yeah, I think that I just go in numb is really a place I know pretty well terms
Right.
of getting away from being present.
So it sounds like a safe place, and it sounds like a problematic place.
Yeah, yeah.
And you notice it happening. When you notice it happening, 'cause probably sometimes you're already there before you realize. When you notice it happening, sometimes you can pull yourself
Hmm.
back into the present.
Yeah,
Sometimes maybe that ship's already sailed.
yeah. And I think that's why, I mean, part of the my relationship with food has been kind of, it's like it gives you something to feel. It's
Hmm.
like a,
Yeah, I was having that conversation with several clients last week around this kind of rule we have as well. Like, if some of it's good, then more of it must be better.
hmm, yeah,
Food can
yeah.
definitely, um, have a pull towards a certain experience. Is that something you getting pulled away from those moments, like on the beach, but maybe sometimes with that bag of chips? I don't know. Is that something that you want to work on in yourself?
Yes, yes, yeah. Especially as I think about it in terms of the the certainty word, and kind of the role that that plays in me pulling back and
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Uncertainty seems to be such a strong aversive for
yeah,
people.
yeah,
And look at the year, we just had. That's just no wonder. Strung out, stressed, escaping, eating, all that stuff. And so even in the big context, it's hard, and in these little moments, it's hard to kind of sit with that.
yeah,
It sounds like it's important to you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I one of my immense values in life is improvisation, and whether it's artistically and
Mm-hmm.
interpersonally,
Mm-hmm.
just music and comedy, and uh, so there I love the idea of, like I said, walking down and just like moving,
Mm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So,
I feel
so
looser saying
there's
that.
yeah, there's something in the way you can do it in other contexts that maybe might help you here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's important because I want to be part of the group that's I mean, contributing to what's happening, and mixing it up, and
Mm-hmm.
going back to what I talked about earlier in terms of like people pleasing, and that those elements are there too, about how am I interacting, how's this interaction go,
Mm-hmm.
how can I
Mm-hmm.
contribute. Yeah,
And so there's the kind of more the I don't want to disappoint anyone sort of narrative there as well.
yeah,
That pull, that aversive there, and it sounds like there's another one about wanting to be kind of free and loose and relaxed and
hmm,
flexible and you know improvise in that sense. That, that seems a little more tangible, but an intangible, but certainly perhaps one that you can
yeah.
focus on
And
in
there's
those moments.
I think that I'm really good at picking up what the attending to the energy that
Hmm.
I'm around, and part of what we're talking about here too is me being like overly focused on
Mm,
that, you know, um, and fitting in there. I
hmm.
think it's important, but I think that it's like hyper focus. It can be kind of microscopic, or or too analytical or something. I don't
Hmm.
know. You know,
So you'd like to be looser,
I would
more
love to be
fluid,
looser. Yes.
right? Okay. So there must be a way. I wonder whether there's almost like a tangible way that you kind of, loosen up to.
How's a tangible way?
Yeah, well, I mean, the other day you was it this morning? You went for a walk and
Last night, yeah.
loosened up last night and loosened up dancing down the street.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
do that was a choice in that moment. There was a
Yeah.
decision there.
Yeah. I mean, there, I mean, the part of the context was listening to some music that I had to move to.
Yeah. And sometimes I might, help people look for those kinds of, tangible cues because I think it can be helpful. We can have an intention to be present.
Yeah.
And if there's a way that, we can kind of either verbalize or physicalize or something
Hmm.
that helps us make that switch, something that's a bit of a reminder. It's like, like the music is for you to sort of, it's just had to move. Sounds a little
Yeah.
like a rule, but at the same time there was a fluidity and a
Yeah.
flexibility there.
Yeah.
When you're with your family on the beach or your friends on the beach and you feel pulled into this, I need this to be all the time. I need this is, and pulled away into fantasy land, what
Hmm.
could you do to kind of get yourself back?
Hmm.
Both kind of, I guess, in your intellectually, I guess I'd say, but also kind of physically present as well.
One of the things I have used, it's funny we're talking about music. I have had some songs, especially jazz songs without lyrics.
Hmm.
I think part of my affinity for jazz is just there's no words, and
Yeah.
I've had a war with words for many decades, and so I do have a few songs that I go to, and I don't need that, I don't need a device to listen to it. I've listened to it enough to be able to listen to it in my head.
Yeah.
Um, there's a song by John Coltrane called Impressions, and that's come into mind as kind of a reminder to um, I just feel that in me, and it helps me connect with a looseness in me, and just connect with me, with something below my chin.
Mm,
Yeah.
nice. And I wonder whether that could be, sometimes you already can kind of pull back into the presence. And I wonder
Hmm.
whether when you're struggling in that space, that might be a little nudge as well that you can use to sort of help you
Yeah.
get back into.
Yeah. It's like there's something about that song that for me, it's kind of like this, like, loosens up the seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
You're going to have to put this in the show notes, you know that.
yeah.
John
Yeah.
Coltrane Impressions. I'm making a note
Yeah.
because
There's
I
many
found
versions, many
I
versions.
really want to listen to this later and
Yeah.
hear what you hear.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. If you give it like a good 500 listens, and then it'll start. It's like a fine
Okay,
wine.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, I'll work on that.
But so I don't know. I mean, I think acknowledging. I mean, first, like a good ACT cult member, I am
Hmm.
going to acknowledge this, this acknowledge this critic, and
Mm,
and
mm.
um,
Knowledge
kind of
is
I the
pulled.
process, just see the process of what's happening there. I think the safety thing and the certainty thing, for me, thinking that way might be helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what am I scared of right now?
What is it about that uncertainty that's so uncomfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I might not be able to be Superman in that moment.
Mm. And then it might end.
Huh?
It might end,
It might
you
end.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Am I doing it right? Is this good enough?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
The good things always end.
Yeah. But not this podcast. We're just going to keep going for
We're going to
a
keep going
couple.
for hours. What a day. What a day.
This is the-
That feels like, though, a good point to kind of
Yeah,
just pause. I don't know
yeah.
about you,
Thank you. That was fun.
leave
Thanks
you in
for
that reflective place. But
walking with me there. Would you care to share some of your process and anything that came up for you there?
I think I'm just interested to hear how kind of subtle that pull is for you, and I see it's a really beautiful reminder because I see so many clients where the pull is so obvious. You
Hmm.
know, they're they're driving down the road and there's KFC and the pull is to drive through, or and the pull just feels huge. Um, and yet also that those tiny moments where you kind of pull away from what's important
Hmm.
can can create really important shifts in people too. So I was really fascinated about that, and thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing
Okay. Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Um, well, thank you. What we mentioned this workbook that you have coming out here, and
Yeah,
it's about 6 months away.
I'm really excited about it. And it's coming out in December 2021,
Yeah.
and
Is there a
the ACT,
title?
yeah, the ACT workbook for perfectionism
Okay.
with
Cool.
New Harbinger,
Yeah.
and
Part of the workbook series.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny because my friends say, "What will it look like?" And I say, "Here's 10 other titles that'll look just like one of these." But maybe it won't be blue. Maybe it'll be a different color. But
Yeah.
I'm really, yeah, I'm really keen to to develop a whole bunch of stuff around it. So there's going to be worksheets and that kind of stuff, and I'm going to be running a training program for praxis as well, sort of in the
Very
lead
cool.
up to launching the book. So
Yeah.
if you people are interested in that, I'll be able to really walk through all the different things. Whatever I've got, I'm happy to share. So
Yeah.
um, scripts and handouts and all that kind of stuff, supplementing that as well. So but that.
And you're available for consultation
I
if
am
people?
available for
Yeah.
consultation. That's right.
Hmm.
I currently have, I do that sort of Monday mornings, Friday mornings, my time,
Hmm.
which is into the US, Sunday afternoons or Thursday
Hmm.
afternoons. And I can do that. I love that. I think ultimately I'll probably see slightly fewer clients and do more consultations because I absolutely love working with
Yeah.
therapists on their own stuff and their own clients.
For the few therapists who have stuff.
Yeah, there's not many of them. And but really, I mean, it's really like I love to sort of help people with that self-reflective practice in sessions. So what's going on for the client and what's going on for you while
Hmm.
that's going on for the client. So um, and that beautiful kind of interplay is really my jam when it comes to consultation.
Cool.
Love that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled for you to come share your jam here with me today.
It's been
Uh,
fun. It's been
yeah,
really fun. I've
yeah,
loved it. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Yeah.
When
So
you
so what's
emailed
that?
me, my self-critic went nuts, you know. And I watched it. It was like all day. It was dropping these little what if you don't know what to say? What if you forget even what perfectionism is? What if you sound stupid? Like, and it was just like, like a little bell going off all day, like ding, ding. Like,
Yeah,
I was just watching this going like, wow, you are really anxious
yeah.
about this. So it's been
Well, let me tell
really
you, I
fun.
think probably.
Cool.
So I'll add your email to the show notes, and obviously
Yes.
when the book's published, a link to the New Harbinger and
Yeah.
for people to
Thank you.
find the book. I'm continuing to do some FAP training groups. We got
Yeah.
with Luke Vandenberg, and so if anyone listening is interested, hit me up, and it's a nice way to work on stuff and
Yeah.
and learn. So and
Yeah.
see function. So
No, I'd love the sound of those groups. They sound
yeah,
awesome. Well done, you.
yeah.
Well, you
All right.
enjoy the beach, won't you? Enjoy
Yeah,
that.
you too. You're on the beach.
Yeah, pretty cool.
But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me.